Somewhere in Turkey, in the same hills where Göbekli Tepe was buried, archaeologists found something unexpected. Not tools, not weapons, not evidence of shelter or survival. They found the remains of a feast. Animal bones, thousands of them, cracked open for their marrow stripped clean, piled together in a way that suggested not one meal, but many. Cooked, consumed, and celebrated over what appears to have been days, possibly weeks. 12,000 years ago, before any city existed, before any crop had been planted, before any written law had been recorded, human beings gathered together in large numbers and threw a party. Not a small one. The evidence suggests hundreds of people, possibly more. And this was not an isolated event. The deeper archaeologists dig, the more they find. The picture that emerges is not of desperate, starving creatures clinging to survival at the edge of extinction. It is of a species that, even in the Stone Age, knew how to celebrate. Most people imagine prehistoric life as constant, grinding survival. That assumption is wrong. In 2018, researchers excavating a site in Jordan called Hilazon Taktit Cave discovered the remains of a 12,000-year-old feast. Traces of food preparation, animal remains from at least 3 different species, evidence that large numbers of people had gathered here specifically to eat together, not for sustenance, for ceremony. The same year, in a separate excavation in Israel, researchers found stone basins carved into the ground, some large enough to hold 70 liters of liquid. Beside them, the chemical traces of fermented grain, beer, 12,000-year-old beer, which means that at roughly the same time humans were building the world's first temple, they were also brewing the world's first drink. These were not accidental discoveries. The more researchers look, the more they find evidence of ancient gathering, of deliberate, organized, large-scale celebration stretching back far further than most people imagine. In 2010, archaeologists at a site in South Africa called Sibudu Cave found traces of a plant compound used specifically to repel insects, packed beneath sleeping areas in what appears to have been a communal space used repeatedly over thousands of years. People returned to this site. They prepared it. They shared it. They came back. And the question that emerges from all of this is not whether ancient humans celebrated. The question is what they were celebrating. In 2012, a cave in Germany called Hohle Fels yielded something that stopped the archaeological team in its tracks. A flute. Not a crude noisemaker, not an accidental hollow bone. A carefully crafted instrument made from a vulture bone, with precisely drilled finger holes, engineered to produce a specific range of notes. It was 40,000 years old. That single object rewrites what we thought we knew about prehistoric life. Because a flute is not a survival tool. You cannot eat a flute, you cannot use it to hunt, you cannot build shelter with it. A flute exists for one reason only, to produce music for other people to hear. Which means 40,000 years ago, someone sat down, spent considerable time and skill creating an instrument, and then played it for an audience. Researchers at the University of Cambridge studied the acoustic properties of multiple ancient sites and found something remarkable. Many of the spaces where ancient humans gathered had been chosen, or in some cases modified, specifically for their sound. The way voices echoed, the way drum beats carried, the way music filled and transformed a space. These were not accidental gathering points, they were venues, and if there were venues, there was performance. If there was performance, there was audience. If there was audience, there was something worth gathering for. There was a show. Here is something most history books skip entirely. The oldest evidence of body decoration on Earth dates to approximately 100,000 years ago. Ochre, a red mineral pigment, being ground, mixed, and applied. To what? To surfaces that no longer survive, but the tools and the residue remain. The most likely answer is skin. 100,000 years ago, human beings were painting themselves. In caves across Europe, Africa, and Asia, archaeologists have found evidence of pigment preparation, personal ornament, shell jewelry, carved beads, all of it worn on the body, all of it created with significant effort, none of it with any practical survival function. These were decorations, costumes, marks of identity, belonging, celebration. In 2021, researchers studying ancient burial sites noted something striking. In many cases, the individuals buried with the most elaborate ornamentation were not the largest or strongest. They were not necessarily the oldest. What they appeared to have in common was a specific social role. Some researchers believe these were the performers, the musicians, the ritual specialists, the entertainers, which means that 40,000 years ago, possibly much longer, human societies had already developed a class of people whose entire function was to make the gathering more powerful, more memorable, more alive. But why gather at all? Survival alone does not require large numbers. Small hunting groups are more efficient than large ones. Smaller groups consume fewer resources. From a purely practical standpoint, gathering hundreds of people in one place is a liability, unless the gathering itself is the point. Researchers studying the social behavior of early humans have proposed something that has gained significant traction in recent years: the idea that large-scale gathering, with its music and food and shared ritual, served a function that was not about survival at all. It was about trust. When you eat with someone, something happens neurologically. When you move in synchrony with a group, dancing, chanting, drumming together, oxytocin levels rise. The boundaries between self and group blur. People who were strangers become, temporarily, something closer. And in a world where your survival might one day depend on the cooperation of people you do not personally know, that temporary closeness had enormous value. The festival was not a break from survival strategy. The festival was the survival strategy. It was the mechanism by which small, isolated groups of humans built the webs of trust and cooperation large enough to eventually build cities, trade networks, and civilizations. You did not go to the ancient festival to have fun. You went to become part of something larger than yourself. And the fact that it was also joyful, that was not incidental. That was the whole point. Every festival you have ever attended carries the ghost of something ancient: the music, the food shared with strangers, the fire, still present in candles, in lanterns, in the screens we gather around in darkened rooms, the decoration of the body before the gathering, the feeling of being for a few hours part of something larger and more meaningful than ordinary daily life. None of this was invented recently. None of this is modern. The oldest known dance depiction in the world was found on a rock carving in India, estimated at between 5,000 and 9,000 years old. Groups of figures clearly in motion, clearly together, clearly celebrating something. The oldest known communal feast site in the Americas dates to over 5,000 years ago. Evidence of cooking, gathering, music, and what appears to be structured ceremony. Every culture on Earth, in every era, without exception, has developed some form of collective celebration, some form of gathering with music and food and decoration and ritual. This is not coincidence. This is not culture. This is something older than culture, something that precedes every religion, every government, every written law. The need to gather, to mark time together, to say, this moment matters. We are here, we are alive, and for now at least, we are together. Think about the last celebration you attended, the food that was prepared, the people who gathered, the music that played, the way the night felt different from an ordinary night, charged with something that regular days do not contain. You were not doing something new. You were doing something 40,000 years old, possibly older. The flute player in the cave in Germany 40,000 years ago played for people who sat and listened and felt something they could not put into words. The same thing you feel when a song catches you off guard. The same thing you feel at 2 a.m. surrounded by people you love, when the night has become something nobody planned and everyone will remember. The gathering, the music, the fire, the food, the feeling, all of it ancient, all of it unchanged. What the first festival was celebrating, we cannot know. But the fact that they celebrated at all, that they gathered and played music, and decorated themselves and feasted together, and returned to the same places again and again to do it, tells us something important about what it means to be human. We have always needed more than survival. We have always needed this.